How do you describe Polygon to people who have no idea what you do?
Oh shit. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's a prohibition on swearing.
No, you can say whatever you want, man.
How do I describe Polygon to people who've never heard about it? I honestly don't run into a lot of people who have never heard of games, video games or video games journalism anymore. So that gives me a really good place to start from. And a lot of times, how do I describe it? Usually when I meet someone or run into someone who doesn't know what Polygon is, they're either a relative or a relative of someone who has no idea what games are in general. Yeah. I think, there are some really well-established journalistic brands that we are certainly trying to follow in the footsteps of, and emulate. That's exactly the word I was looking for. When you think of something like New York Magazine or the New Yorker, or Esquire, Rolling Stone, is a really good analog for a sort of product-focused journalism that has expanded to become something more. I would not be displeased if at some point someone other than me compared Polygon to Rolling Stone, because I think that's kind of the niche we're trying to fit into. I think games journalism is at a point now where it can support an outlet with broader ambitions. I think a lot of what they have done, a lot of what Wenner has done at Rolling Stone is admirable, and I wouldn't mind copying that and being compared to that.
So I think the obvious question is, do you know why, or have you thought about why, a lot of games journalism does not aspire to the same heights? A lot of it is a bit more TMZ kind of thing. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, well, we have to, right? I mean, when we sat down over a year ago now and started talking about building Polygon, we didn't know it would be called Polygon at the time. The very first thing we did was look at what everyone else is doing and say, where could we fit in, right? What could we do? Because when you want to build something on the scale that we want to build Polygon, it doesn't really work to say we're going to do exactly what everyone else is going to do, unless we know how to do that better than they're doing it. And with so many people competing in the space, that would be a really ambitious thing to say and try and do. What we saw, though, was that no one was really in this space and doing the style of features that we have since started doing the type of journalism that we like to think that we're doing. As to why, I think every outlet has to serve their audience and has to serve its publishers' ideals. And there's obviously there's obviously money to be made in doing the type of journalism that we're not doing, right? There's a lot of people making a lot of money doing it, and you can't say that that's wrong. You can't say that's a failure. It works for them. It doesn't work for us.
So has it been difficult? Because dare I say, a lot of people took notice when Polygon was originally announced, even when it was just Vox Games or Verge Gaming, and before it was officially Polygon. Has it been difficult to find your way in that atmosphere, to experiment? Do you feel like there's a lot of pressure?
It certainly did feel like there was a lot of pressure at the very beginning. Absolutely. We made a lot of noise. We kind of had to. When you invest as heavily as Vox did in Polygon, there's a lot of motivation to make sure a lot of people know that you're coming, and then it becomes, at the time it was the most heavily funded new video game site. It may still be, I don't know, but. So that carried with it a lot of pressure, and then I think the biggest issue we faced at the very beginning was that everyone had slightly different expectations. We tried as hard as we could to make sure that what we had planned was well communicated, but in a lot of ways, what we're doing now is different than what we had intended to do at the very beginning. We've altered course, we've changed things up a little bit, so it's really impossible to accurately set expectations with something that big and sort of new. Yeah. And I think we got into a little bit of trouble there, and certainly a lot of people projected their expectations onto us, and were sure to let us know, positively and negatively. I think we got a lot of heat from the British press in particular, a lot of cynicism, as the cynicism that they're well known for, that this would be yet another crappy games blog. I like to think that we have exceeded their expectations in that regard. But honestly, I think that's the hardest part. I think it took us maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 months of being branded Polygon, of pushing our own content on our own website, before we really felt from the public and the audience that they had an understanding of what we were trying to do. And then once they know, once they can get a feel for what we're trying to do, then they can decide whether or not they want to support it or not, right? And I feel like that's the zone we're in now. I feel like we've pretty clearly established what it is we're trying to do, the type of content we're aiming for, and I feel like the support we're getting now is less, hopeful or prospective. What's the word I'm looking for? Tentative. It's more a genuine appreciation of the type of work that we're doing.
Is there anything about the direction that you as the founders wanted to go in or ended up going in that surprised Vox?
I don't think so. Not because they are all-knowing. I think they're very pleased at the direction we've taken and some of the things that we've done. In a lot of ways, a lot of process-oriented things that we've done. As I don't know whether it's because we're video gamers or whether because we have a core of 8 or so seasoned veterans, but I don't think they expected as much organization and thoughtful process as we brought to the project. I know they've been very pleased with that in particular. But as far as the content goes, I don't think they necessarily had any clear ideas or expectations. What we have felt all along was that they wanted to attract people they felt were talented and experienced, and then just step back and see what we came up with. And so far, they've been very pleased with what we've come up with.
So I am, truthfully, a huge fan of Polygon. I absolutely love the site. I love everything about it, especially the features. But there's one thing that I actually do not like, which is and it's a very small thing, but one thing that I've never understood was the choice to go with this, I don't know how many points it is exactly, but it's 10 points with these 0.5 points for the review system. Now, this is because I'm a big, I guess you could say I'm a devotee of Jeff Gersman, who has the complete opposite opinion. The review score should be as simple as possible. Can you speak at all to the thought process behind that system specifically?
Yeah, I can speak very generally about the reviews. That's not the area I'm really focusing on, but I recall in December, I remember if it was December or January, December of 11 or January of 12, when we had our first big Polygon Founders meeting in Washington, D.C. That was the longest and most loudest, most vocal discussion we had was about reviews, and it is a very complex subject in the games media industry, because there is a very the outlet I came from. At The Escapist, we did not start with, when we started running reviews, we did not initially start with scores. And then I eventually, as the editor-in-chief of that site, came around to scores. But a lot of the other founders, don't believe in scores. Some of them do believe in scores. And then when you say, okay, we're going to do scores, then it becomes, as you said, it becomes a very lengthy conversation about, well, what is the exact score system and why? There are very good reasons for everyone's point of view on that subject. The issue of whether or not to do scores was not even really that much of a debate with us at Polygon. The current environment for games media makes it very difficult to run a publication without scores. And we recognize that, and the overwhelming majority decision was that we needed scores. For many reasons, yeah. And then you get into the conversation of what should that score system be, right? I have a lot of respect for Jeff Gersman, and I love everything they do over at Giant Bomb, and I tend to agree that simple things are best. But one also has to defer to the current standard, which is, for better or worse, has been established by Metacritic and how they aggregate scores. I know I can't speak for Arthur. I'm sure he ran into issues where he used to work. I also ran into issues where I used to work in having a score that didn't fit exactly into the Metacritic system. And then what they do in that system, if you publish a score, so say you have a 5-point score system, and Metacritic uses a percentage system, well, they'll round, right? Which can dramatically alter a score once it's aggregated into their system. That is one of the reasons we went with the score system that we went with. We wanted to ensure that when our scores were being aggregated and reported elsewhere, they were as closely representative of what we had on our site as possible.
Okay, so that's fascinating, because honestly, I think I may have put Polygon on a bit of a pedestal imagining that it's like, oh, you guys don't bow to anything. I'm actually curious now if you can elaborate on any areas where you actually had to make some compromises. Like Metacritic is an interesting example. If your score's not on Metacritic, that could actually be kind of devastating. Are there any other areas where you guys were like, well, we got to do this thing, even though we're Supermen?
That's terrible. I don't think,
And women.
Superman and women, yeah. I don't think any of us, when we first started talking about Polygon, thought that we were above the industry. And I think that's the most important thing I could say on this topic. When you talk about starting something from scratch, you can say, and I know a lot of very talented and successful people who have started other publications and have gone their own way and tried to blaze a trail. And I think that there's value to that, and as many perspectives as we can have in this business, the consumer in particular will only benefit, and we benefit from that as well as content creators. But I think if you're going to blaze a trail, and I think I may have alluded to this earlier, if you're going to do something radically different, it either it has to be so radically different that it cannot possibly be compared to anything else, or it has to be the best possible example of that you can make. And I don't think any of us really felt in any area of Polygon that we were prepared to say we were going to break radically new ground, or we're going to do something so completely different that, we wanted to make a successful, as mainstream as possible media outlet. And you can only be so esoteric if you want to have a broad audience and you want to have a successful base, right, and have a broad foundation. So the idea of not doing scores at all, and I may have jumped off topic of your question, but there weren't a lot of areas. The Metacritic example is really the only example that comes to mind of something where we, so viscerally had to respond exactly to a standard set somewhere else. I think there are a lot of smaller incremental areas where we have done that. It's just not as big of a deal. Metacritic is a really hot button issue, but when I think about how we created our features and how we talked about presenting those and publishing those, there's a lot of existing journalistic and publishing standards that we adhere to simply because it makes sense to people.
So are there any areas in Polygon where you actually see the potential for like significant growth? Is there any kinds of features that aren't possible now that you want to be doing?
I don't honestly think there's anything that isn't possible to do right now in media, and particularly in online media. I think what we've seen in the past couple of years, and certainly what we responded to in wanting to create Polygon, was that the boundaries are rapidly eroding. And as we look, there was a lot of panic several years ago when tablets and other mobile devices had begun to erode the revenue stream for online media. And I think what we're seeing now is a sort of a new wave of publications that are responding to that and taking advantage of the new opportunities. And it's interesting, when I look at it, I see not so much a paradigm shift as just another evolution. We're basically coming back to very traditional models of publishing that have worked for hundreds of years. Just it's a different format, it's a different media. The biggest problem most media outlets fall into, it's a trap actually that they fall into, is falling in love with a platform or a technology. And if history has shown us anything, is that platforms and technologies don't last as long as just sort of the basic fundamentals of people wanting quality in the most friendliest, most portable format, right? So the type of work that we're doing right now is I don't think it's that dramatically revolutionary. I think it's types of content that have been created for a long time. And we're doing, what I like to say is that we're doing, on the feature side, we're doing magazine style features on the web, right? And that's not, I didn't invent this. Nobody at Polygon invented this. People have been doing this kind of content for a long time, just not on the web, So to the extent that I think we've invented anything, it's just solving a problem that people have been battering their head against for a long time, of how to do that on the web and make it monetizable and build a business out of it.
So finally, do you and your associates agree with the sentiment that in many ways Polygon is like the Miami Heat of games outlets?
Man, I'm embarrassed that I don't actually know enough about basketball to know if that's an apt analogy or not. I think, tying into a question you asked me earlier, I think that we definitely got a lot of attention when we announced that we were doing Polygon because of the breadth of talent. You had 3 editors-in-chief. You had people who had worked at almost every outlet that does gaming media in the world. That's that in itself is a bold statement, and Vox's willingness to bring us all together, and bankroll that, and then fund and support everything that our collected minds decided we wanted to do. And it's like, we were throwing ideas at each other on day one, and it was not like small stuff. It was, we want to do all the best stuff that we have all done or seen done at our respective former outlets, and that's all the time. Yeah. We want the best of everything, all in one place. And that's a really ambitious and terrible thing to say. And I don't know how well we've achieved that at every level, but we're still trying. What I think makes Vox and Polygon really unique is that we are able to iterate pretty quickly and effectively. So, like Polygon today is, I think we rolled out Polygon 2.0 last week or the week before that. So the website's actually seen continual changes and evolutions. That in itself is a paradigm shift in web media, where the editorial team typically outnumbers the technology team by 10 to 1. We actually have more product guys than we have editorial company-wide, right? And that's by design. So and I'm sorry, I lost track of what the original question was.
That's okay. It's just great to hear you talk.